Guys, welcome back to the sculpture. Today, at this stage of the sculpture, even though I still have a lot of stuff to do and do all the details, before I do the details, we have to do something that everybody seems to hate with water-based clay. And that is to scoop out the inside, because we hopefully are going to be firing this in a kiln. Now, if you put an armature inside your sculpture, or if you're doing like a standing sculpture with an armature, then you cannot fire it. You would have to remove the inside armature if it's metal, because in order for this to fire, we're going to put it in a kiln, but it can't be solid clay. It has to be hollow inside, because the clay actually shrinks a little bit. It's like 5, 6, 7%. It actually shrinks a little bit because the water disappears from the clay. So it gets a little bit smaller. So what happens is that everything kind of gets tighter and smaller, and often it develops cracks. And that's why the hands are a little bit of a weak point, because it's touching the the tips of the fingers on the base. So that's a very fragile touch point for the sculpture. So that's why I put a little bit more clay on there. But what I'm going to be doing in this session is to dig out and hollow out the sculpture, and we are going to vent it to the base. And what happens with the clay inside, it's pretty moist, so we are going to be using that for another project. You know, you don't throw it away. We need to look for where the geometry is that's less intrusive, so you definitely don't want to scoop from the front of the head. You might want to scoop from the back where there's like less detail. So if I take this tool, for example, and I think I might use a smaller tool to start out with. I'm just going to start removing this. And it looks like I'm just removing a lot of work, and you know, in a way I am, but it's surprisingly easy to do, and you don't have to dig out everything. You can kind of feel the depth of the clay, and the goal is to get as much as possible. Kind of push down and out. Sometimes you're overzealous with the amount of clay that you remove, and it's better to not remove as much. You just want like a uniform thickness throughout your sculpture. And I'm going to feel where that neck is, because if you look at the neck and the hair, you can pretty much almost dig a hole straight down. But if you can't, you can wait a little bit. I'm going to take my tool here, and I'm just going to do this, because the hair section is actually fairly easy to re-sculpt, because it doesn't have that much detail. Taking the tool and going towards the shoulders. And both shoulders. And I'm able to kind of get these large chunks out. There we go. See if I can dig more to the front. Now, all of this clay, you can just bundle it up as much as you can, like this. And I really try and save every single bit of clay, because I could do projects with it. Now, the lower back here. The lower back, I think right about here is going to be the spot that I'm going to be digging. So let's start here. And you want to start from the top and work your way down, because the top has got more weight. So that also means that you need to leave a little bit more clay at the very bottom, because you want it to support the weight of the figure. Sometimes you can remove a little bit too much, and that's going to be an issue later on. Able to connect this to the other side. Now we need to dig into this thigh, and I'm just going to do the same way. I'm going to start, let's see, maybe here. It's a little bit harder to push, but when you remove it and push it out, it does come out. Here, so I'm going to see if I can remove, starting here, making, and unfortunately I am losing a little bit of the geometry here, but that's what you have to do. Okay, and almost to the middle. This tool is a little bit better. It's like a little bit sharper. You do need like a sharp tool to get this thing out. There we go. It's actually already off. So just a little bit towards the front. A lot of clay is coming out. Size, I think what I'm going to be doing is making a hole right about here. Right here on the lateral side or the medial side of the thigh. And there is a lot of clay here. It out here. So I'm going to dig a little bit more here on this part, and I'm going to do the same thing I did on the other leg. And this one's going to be a little bit more difficult and give you a little bit more work, but I think it's a good idea to do. The arms, I'm not quite sure I need them because they're pretty thin. I might vent some stuff, but I don't know. I might do that even afterwards. Because you have to be very careful at this point. You don't want to do any major surgery. Your clay is nice and wet, especially in the holes, because we're going to cover them up. All right, guys, so we are ready to start putting everything together. And make sure that we're going to work on this hole, and I'm just going to do an example. You want to get a very rough tool, and this is the tool I'll be using. It's got like this wire in there. It's quite rough. And the idea is that you kind of score this. You want to create an edge to it. And it's going to be like almost like slop. Like that, right? And now you take some very soft clay. But before, you just want to kind of do this quite a bit. Get it really wet. Almost like it's called a slip. Get it really, really wet. And now, take a piece of clay. What I like to do is get it in my hands like this. I'll shape it. And same thing, this gets a little bit messier because the clay is just so much wetter than what you're wanting to work with. You want to just get this really wet, that this is really wet. And now, just kind of like put it on top. And I am going to use a tool to kind of push it down. You have to be careful. You don't want to destroy the geometry of the front or even the back. So, right, you have to be kind of like surgeon-like with this. And the clay that you remove, you want to blend it as well as you can and push it. Remember, this is like very thin, very soft. And you want to be able to build this section up as softly and thinly as you can so the clay adheres to the other part. And I can see this part didn't take too well, but we are going to get the clay on there. And what I like to do is just keep it really moist. You can see I'm putting a lot of water into it. Let's get it really wet. Roughen it up. I like to create a bevel because then the clay, it's easier to add the clay. The bigger the hole, the harder it is to really fix, but this is a fairly large hole and you'll be able to see I should be able to fix this fairly easy. So get really a lot of water on here. You want to roughen it up as much as possible. It's almost like a liquid. Now I'm going to take my clay, I have it in my hand, I'm going to work it, make sure that it's nice and soft as you can possibly get, because you want it to melt really with that clay. And take your water like that. There we go. Look at that. Just kind of melt it. It's better to use your hands as well. And we're going to add a little bit more clay because this is very thin. And I'm going to take my tool and I'm just going to roughen this up. And I'm going to brush it towards the outside because I don't want to create any weird holes and stuff.